and I'm with the Moon Across the Zodiac series. And today I'm going to talk about the moon in Aquarius. Now, first and foremost, for me, Aquarius is the 12th house, and I woke up today to discourses on social media concerning mental health and health in general, because it's the 12th, 6th axis. And so you can see my Porter twist on my tweet, sweet, on an ailment that was like, okay, tell me the moon is in my 12th house without telling me the moon is in my 12th house. So you can see that happening with the moon, because the moon is basically the fastest moving planet uh, in relation to how we experience it from the Earth, and it spends only 2.5 days in each constellation, sidereally, or in each sign tropically. And you we use the moon also to connect us to the other planets. So if the moon is making, let's say, hard aspect to Mars, it can bring, if you do talismans or astrological magic, it can bring the energies of Mars into the Earth. And this is why you would always take a look at the position of the moon and make sure that the moon is contacting the planet that you desire to get something from, preferably. So if you want to have an election or have a talisman or whatnot. So a moon is cool and moist. It is yin, or feminine. It's in its effect. And Aquarius is, oh, and of course takes 28 days to kind of circle around the constellations. And Aquarius is a young air sign. Um, is it? I think, yes, it is a fixed air sign. It's like, why was it in my 12th again? It's like, I know this. What happened? So, hi there. So Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and when I look at the sign, I always look at what it is ruled by, because it's going to tell me about the nature. I can look, for example, well, I'm not going to say anything about, well, no, but when I look at the moon in the domain of a sign that is ruled by Saturn and modernly by Uranus, I look at the moon at the domain of Saturn, at the Saturn ruled moon. But we said yesterday that Saturn also rules Capricorn, so what's the difference? Okay, and the difference is also in the modality. Aquarius is fixed, and also in the element. Aquarius is air, so we can't talk about Saturn as a dense body of hierarchy and order. We can talk more like a cosmic order. If you think about the planets in the cosmos, they are organized in a way that is very dynamic. They have order. But if we think about the cosmos in general, not from an Earth perspective, then we think about something that has some sort of order and arrangement within it. It is very vast, and unless you take, God or Source into account, it is not ruled by anything. It is a mechanism where you're outside a certain structure. It's the great vast, it is space. This is why the modern ruler of Aquarius also relates to space, missions to space. We're about to have Pluto entering Aquarius, so a lot of space research. Hopefully not in the dark shades of, nuclear war in space or whatnot, but if you think about nuclear engines, they can be used for technologies to travel to space. Okay, missiles already travel to space. And Aquarius also have a modern ruler. And I am one of the people who do use modern rulers. I know that it's very questionable for some people, so you can decide what works for you. I just look at my own chart and say, you cannot interpret my chart, my 10th house in Sagittarius according to whole sign correctly if you don't understand that the ruler of the 12th is in the 10th. It's not just me being unconventional, it's the particular way and the particular things that I bring to this 10th house that are coming from the 12th in Aquarius. And I just, to me, that's, yeah, I do work with modern rulers. So a moon in Aquarius would not only be a moon ruled by the Saturn type of the order within chaos, or the order within anarchy, or the way things are arranged within anarchy, or the dogmas of anarchical people, the dogmas of the outcasts, not necessarily the outcasts, but those who are outside the structure. That can be very dogmatic. Think about in a religious system, that would be the atheists, which is why it's almost like people associate Aquarius also with science. All the science and religion were always very interrelated. Um, so the people who are the scientists who would do observations, or who would and the people who would channel would be considered outside of the Capricorn structure, um, but they would not necessarily be any less dogmatic. And this is something important to remember about Aquarius. And as to the modern ruler, Uranus, is unexpected. It has a sort of the way it moves and the sudden flips it has is kind of like think when you think about how planets walk around the ecliptic. Think about the silly walk of Monty Python. This is how Uranus travels across the cosmos and surrounding the sun. It's unusual. It's just like the silly walk. And so it is considered related to authenticity, to the weirdness, to owning your weirdness, to not being like the rest of them, to being unique, to being individual, um, also to inventiveness and anything that the mass consciousness, the nervous system of the masses, machine learning, but on a great scale, AI to some extent, technologies, that change the world. Okay, innovations, inventions, all those unexpected things in terms of gender or commitment style. So Uranus is the sort of I would be very cautious to say disorganized attachment pattern. This is especially when we're going to the moon, and we're going to talk about the moon's attachment pattern as well. But yes, it is unpredictable. It is unpredictable. It is air. And then what happens when the moon is sort of Uranus ruled? And this also applies when the moon aspects Saturn or aspects Uranus, but also when it is in Aquarius. Basically, when we talk about having the moon natally, somewhere is this the type of self nourishment. If it's a transit, the type of self nourishment that you do. What do you need to feel satisfied, safe? Um, what are your moon needs? What are your psychological needs, your emotional needs, um, in terms of um, the infant that is born? What would feel like a safe womb to you? Um, and in Aquarius, we are actually talking space. And that can manifest as many things. It can mean that, let's say, learning about astrology can be a sort of self care practice for you, even. because Uranus also rules astrology. It's the science of the cosmos, the science of the stars. It can mean that it's very important for you to be in the surroundings where you can be yourself. Now, Saturn, which is also true to Capricorn, we talked yesterday about Capricorn, about this meditative practice around the mountain. It's also about being alone, so isolation, times of isolation. Being alone is not being lonely. So, your need to have your own space is very important for your self care. You can't have a relationship when somebody suffocates you or when somebody expects you to not have times where you just retreat, because you need that, depending on the house, of course. But you need that self retreat to connect with the planets, to connect with the cosmos. You need to be where you're able to be yourself. You can't be stressed out. And you can even find yourself to be a weirdo amongst weirdos in this sense, because you are outside of a structure. So if I put you in a place where everybody is outside of the structure, you would still need to be outside of that new structure. That can give a sense where your emotional self requires rebellion, because it wants to go outside of the existing dogma. It doesn't, and it is very dogmatic in this way, because it needs to be outside of the norm, and being outside of the norms like polar opposites. You're still dogmatic, it's just dogmatic from the outside. Um, so think about um, think about that as a need you have in order to feel nourished. What does the outside look? If you think about nourishment or the moon as the safe womb, then the safe womb for you is the cosmic womb. It's not, it's the outside of some place. For example, if you're having like mental conditions or something like that, you're probably not going to feel very happy in hospitalization or something like that. You're probably not going to like it very much. Probably going to hate hospitals. Um, Unless there is like a big yard that you could go out to, or you would prefer to be outdoors. In general, being outdoors can be very nourishing for you. It's not being outdoors in the sense that Capricorn is. It's not being, the survival. And although it has a survivalistic thing, if you think about how do people go to space, wearing things that are very isolating. Um, and doing unconventional things is literally self-care for you. Again, this is air sign. It's not just a state of being, yin, staying static. It's doing something. So traveling to where you meet nature or you face nature, traveling where you can be under the stars or even sleep under the stars can be very nourishing. Um, or you can be a person that does that in a more scientific way, building a time machine, okay? or or visualizing a time machine. Again, air, the upper chakras. So visualization, moon, also the eyes, um, and the third eye. So being in a place that is technological, you could find rest in in a lab even. You could be the type of person that goes to the lab to work because this is your self-care right now. If you're doing lonely work, um, that can be quite helpful, but you then have to be careful that you don't stress yourself over, because again, it's a fixed yang, so it's going to be active in a fixed way, and the moon is not is it's not fixed. But then it is also ruled by Uranus, which is unexpected, and that is something that the moon shares a lot. Because if the moon is moving fast, it's going to be in a different location every day. Um, and the quirkiness of Uranus, that it may be moving slow, but it's moving unpredictably, so it is going to be in a different state, or sudden change of state. The moon is very much in line with sudden changes of state. It's just the scale that it is happening with Uranus is the larger scale, and with the moon, it's the tiny scale. But if you connect those unpredictable changes, or be where something is unpredictable, also temperature. Right now with Uranus in Taurus, we have um, the the climate change worries begin to really materialize, and suddenly it gets unusual weather, like everywhere. So, but with the moon there, it can have a sort of like cathartic and energetically cathartic effect, where something suddenly changes phase, where something is unpredictable, where something is unusual, around unusual people, unusual colors, unusual imageries, unusual analogies, anything that is not the dogma of a given structure, that goes outside of something, um, can be very beneficial. And so to philosophize or intellectualize can also be a calming practice, a self-care practice, that kind of help you to compartmentalize what you're dealing with emotionally. So for some people, um, that very logical mind, with the Uranus, with the moon um, in an air sign, or the moon in Aquarius, they can calm down from being logical. If Aries can get excitement from being logical, like a Mercury Aries, thought is exciting. Moon can find being logical soothing. Can depending on the person. This is also ruled by Uranus, so it's unpredictable. So I can't really predict what would be self care for you. And this is also a very, if you think about medicine, it's a very patient based. I know it is society, and then the larger society and the masses, because it's like the cosmic order. Um, but at the same time, think about the micro and the macro. Okay, think about how nanotechnology is versus astrophysics, and how learning the cosmos, and learning the structure of mm, particles can be quite similar. Just being aware of that, you can be something that you find calming when you have the moon in Aquarius. And when the moon is Aquarius in Aquarius in transit, then you need to look at the house this is happening for you. Um, but this is a time to to do the kind of thinking that brings ease. Being aware, for example, if I would do a Spirit of Matter episode about me, and I would say one of the things that I go by in terms of medicine is that your worldview should be soothing. Then think about me having Aquarius in the 12th whole sign, and then Scorpio in the ninth. So it's like your worldview should be soothing to the endocrine system, to the nervous system. Um, And if it's not, you can have ailment. Like your worldview can affect how you feel, how you think. It's not just how you think. It's not just, oh, be positive. No. What do you believe about the world, about the cosmos, can have an effect on your well-being. What happens after that can have an effect on your well-being with this. Um, and just the moon crossing over that can have an awareness of those effects, or it can be that you just feel like doing something unconventional, or to isolate yourself, look at the stars, to study astrology. Again, it's a 2.5 days transit. Um, if you think about the electric current in your nervous system, then what kind of thoughts would be soothing for you? So instead of removing thought, or think about the space between thoughts, that instead of removing thoughts, to think about the space between thoughts, but also to think what kind of thoughts are soothing, what kind of insights are making me feel safe, and they can be unconventional. If I think about the principle of the doubt, and um, that Shakespearean, I don't remember which Shakespearean artwork it was, but when the hero just holds a skull and say, however rich you are, however poor you are, we all end up in the same way. And that was soothing for the hero. It was an insight, it was a soothing insight. Um, so you could be relieved, or think about, watching people who went through near-death experiences and gaining, like a soothing effect from that. It doesn't seem like not the natural pastime for a human being trying to think something not death related. Um, Expressing a side of you that is awkward. Maybe you're the type of person who likes, I don't know, saffron in their ice cream. I tasted saffron ice cream once, and that was me traveling to this shop with the person who was actually an Aquarian. So eating saffron ice cream, or eating something that is unusual, um, it can be a form of relaxation. It's something that you need to do quirky things, to be around quirky things, to feel good. Um, Monty Python has some sketches that are very Aquarius soothing. So this is for the moon in Aquarius. I know people would usually say, "Oh, it's an optimistic person. It wants to do good for humanity. It wants to." It's a human being. Come on. Being Aquarian does not necessitate you're wanting to do good for humanity. Maybe you want to take over the world. Okay, that can also be a manifestation of that. Um, and another word is anarchy. So with anarchy, you need to remember anarchy, and I'm quoting my IR lecturer, anarchy is not disorder. Anarchy is lack of an overall regime, but it's not a disorder. It doesn't mean that there are no arrangement for this system. This is something that's important to remember when Pluto hits Aquarius, and people are like, oh, it's going to be the power of the people, but it is also the power of the masses. You need a certain political culture to um, to get the best of what either hierarchy or anarchy has to offer. So something that is of the people, for the people, is true, but you still need to remember that people are people. And the other polarity, hello there, the other polarity of Aquarius is Leo. which is very heart-centered, person-centered, um, ego, the self-centered. So this is like the shade or the shadow. But when the person sheds light on that, then they can understand that their humanitarian desires are accompanied with the wish to be appreciated for how good and how pure-hearted they are. Um, but it can also mean like a sense of connection that is more mental, to the cosmos, and having big ideas, and being innovative, having big technological ideas and being innovative. It doesn't make a person necessarily like a good person, or even an especially effective person. You would need to take a look at other considerations. So this is for the moon in Aquarius. Let me know where your moon sign is at if you have planets in Aquarius. What is your experience? What do you do for self-care? How did you um, how did you see it playing out throughout your life? Oh, and I promised I would speak about the attachment. Yes, the moon is also the way we attach. So if moon in Capricorn is the Saturn ruled phase of consistency, so there's a need for consistency, but also for to be alone or isolated. If I take into account the Uranus effect, then here there is a need for an unconventional order. It doesn't mean that the person cannot be happy in, let's say, monogamous relationship, but they need a sort of unconventional order, unconventional attachment style. Can it manifest as disorganized attachment style or relational trauma? Yes, especially on the detached kind of level. Um, it just means that the attachment, the emotional attachment is felt and perceived on a very mental plane and ideological plane sometimes, rather than, tangible physical plane. Um, so yeah, it can be a strange way of um, attaching. I'm not even relating, because relating is also Venus. Um, and uh, this is just awareness. I spoke about synastry yesterday. If you have a moon in Aquarius and somebody has their moon like in Cancer or in Taurus, then you could have radically different needs out of what the relation means to you on an emotional level, or how do you experience a relation on an emotional level. But those differences does not necessitate, um, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to bridge or to respect. This moon in Aquarius is also young, and if you put it, if let's say someone has a yin moon, then the yang is kind of providing for yin, um, and that can be actually a very respectful connection. So I wouldn't jump into conclusions, but I would take note that if you are satisfied, if you feel, if your pastime, or if what makes you feel emotional connection is things of the mental plane, and your partner has it more like physical touch, but not necessarily only as love language, but as emotional connection per se. What would make them feel attached to you? What would make them relate to you? But not just on a Venus level, on a deeply psychological level. What would make them feel nourished and safe around you? Okay. Then it is much more based about compatibility and how the moon is aspected than, just saying, oh, moon in Aquarius, it's Uranus ruled, it's probably, chaotic and unpredictable. Okay, for some people, that's exactly what keeps the vibe alive and allows them to be in a, even a monogamy. You never know. So, I'm Talishir on Twitter. I'm Shirley Youngblood on Instagram. I do readings. You can contact me on Instagram or Twitter for a reading, or you can write the comments below your contact details. That can also be. Let me know what moon sign are you, if that helped you, and how do you do your self care. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.